Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. This is the second game that was played between Magnus Carlsen and Ian Nepomniachtchi. I wasn't doing this one in the order. The one I posted yesterday was the second game, and this was the first one. This is the game where both players agreed to a draw, and the other one Magnus took the lead. So Magnus with the white pieces opens with one e4, Nepo with the black responds with one e5, and Magnus goes for knight f3, attacking the pawn on e5. Nepo defends it with knight c6 and bishop to b5. We have the Rai Lopez on the board. The idea is the bishop may take the knight here, and maybe black takes with this pawn or this pawn, but either of them messes up black's structure a little bit by placing double pawns on the c file. So knight to f6 by Nepo, attacking the undefended pawn on e4. So Magnus ignores it and simply castles. Nepo takes the free pawn, and we have a d4 striking in the center. Maybe Magnus, if Nepo doesn't want to take, Magnus wants to push this pawn further, attack the knight, and we have knight back to d6. So Magnus realizes, I think he realizes that these both knights are very well placed in the center, and they're doing a great job protecting the king, and the bishops are not still activated. But so Magnus decides to trade a knight here, and of course it messes up the black's pawn structure. And now we have um, d takes e5. The idea is, if you now we have to move your knight, and we have open queens. Of course Magnus takes the queen here, because black can only take back the queen and the king. So knight moves, takes. Now Nepo can't castle anymore, as his king has already moved. We have a rook check from d1. Nepo simply moves to e8. So we have knight to c3. Normal development from Magnus. Maybe Magnus wants to go for bishop g5, and maybe go for this deadly mate. As the rook is holding this strong d file. So Nepo sees this, and he opens his bishop and activates his rook. Maybe he wants to get his rook and trade rooks. So then we have knight to g5, attacking this bishop, and so if he takes with this pawn, this file will be open for the king. So it just goes back. Okay, Nepo is like, I'm going to activate my bishop maybe from this side. And we have h3. Maybe this is a good move, because if the position was like this, it would be very deadly for the white king, and as he's stuck in behind these three pawns. So white king may have the ideas to move to h2 at some point. Maybe if rooks are the opposite kingdom rooks are facing towards each other. So we have bishop to e7, attacking the knight. Knight comes back to f3, and we have h5. Now Nepo is trying to attack on the king side. He wants to maybe push this pawn and further attack the knight, and maybe attack these pawns. So the idea is here is simple and clear. Both side players are trying to push their king side pawns and attack. So knight back to e2 from Magnus. Maybe Magnus wants to play g3 and trade off knights. And we have knight to h4. Okay, I'm going to Nepo is like, let's trade knights. My bishop is doing a good job here, and even my bishop can be well placed here. So takes, and we have g3 attacking the bishop. The bishop has to go back, and we have king to g2. So it's kind of a good idea, because when you have these isolated pawns, I think for me the basic idea is here would be to push h4. But king g2 is good because it guards all these pawns and the king is in a safe position for now. So we have bishop f5. Nepo is trying to take this pawn and attack attack the rook. So Magnus simply moves the pawn forward. Is not interested in any captures. So we have a c5 from Nepo, pushing his pawns. Maybe he wants to activate this pawn because he has pretty messed up double pawns on the c file. So bishop to bishop to e3, attacking the maybe putting pressure on this pawn. Maybe knight can jump some point and maybe attack this pawn. And we have g5 from Nepo. He wants to push further and destroy all these pawns, destroy the structure. So Magnus simply sees this and he moves his f2. So we have good control on these squares. g4 by Nepo and knight to actually g4 by Nepo allows knight to f4 for Magnus because this will be an excellent position for the knight, and maybe knight can some point jump here and maybe fork the king and rook, but that would not be the actual idea. So knight to f4 from Magnus. We have capture stakes, and we have b6 from Nepo opening up this diagonal. But black has not no need. Black has no need to worry because white is white doesn't have a white's light squared bishop. So we have d2 from Magnus. Maybe Magnus is ready to double his rooks on the d file and attack, put pressure on the d file and attack the king. So Nepo is ready to trade rooks, and Magnus simply waits for the opportunity. I think a nice move here would be to play for Nepo to play bishop to d c2, attack this rook, and maybe if Magnus takes, so I mean that forces basically Magnus to capture to trade off rooks. So we have takes and we have bishop to d1. Maybe Nepo wants to move his king and connect his rook with bishop. So h4 from Magnus, locking up the position. This knight is excellently placed on f4, and we have c6 from Nepo. So we have doubled the pawns, but we have a dark square bishop, and most of three of Nepo's pawns are on dark square. So your dark square bishop wouldn't be that much useful. So we have knight back to g2. Maybe Magnus wants to bring his knight back to e1 and maybe attack on this side. Maybe to e1 and attack on d3. So check from Nepo. King goes back and rook to rook to g8. Maybe Magnus wants to defend. He wants to defend the rook, and maybe he can push this pawn and forward. But white doesn't allow that because he has this very strong structure here. So bishop to e7 from Nepo, just wants to maybe push further and maybe he wants to attack these pawns, but in case this pawns ever moves forward. Bishop to f4. Magnus maybe he wants to push this pawn and attack maybe from this side. Rook to g6. Nepo wants to bring his rook into the game, as it was pretty inactive till then. He wants to maybe no here it would be a blunder. He wants to maybe bring his rook here and pick up the pawn. Knight to c1. Maybe no Magnus. I think he is ready to ready to go for f3 and cut off this diagonal for this bishop. Maybe the rook wants to jump in and go for this check. So bishop goes back to c6. Nepo does not allow this pawn to advance further. knight to f3, mm, and we have a bishop to d5 attacking the knight, because Nepo realized this knight is doing is I think he realized it's doing a good job, so I have to eliminate this piece. So we have bishop to g5. Now, ideally, white would think that his pawn and knight are protecting the bishop, but at the same time, black's bishop and black's rook are attacking this bishop. So black can take here, which Nepo actually did. Because if you take this knight here and you take it, black can simply capture, you capture, and black capture. So now black is up a pawn, and this pawn, rook has to guard this pawn. So now Nepo actually captures the knight. Now Magnus actually captures the bishop here. Takes and king capture and king captures. So now we have equal number of pieces on the board. We have a what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 pawns, 6 black pawns and 6 white pawns, and we have and a rook in game. So both players are trying to get their kings into the game. White king moves forward, but Nepo goes for this check and he wants to put the king back, uh, and goes back, and Nepo goes back again. Magnus maybe wants to go for this check, maybe after he pushes his king to f4. Maybe that's the idea. If he goes for this check, he can pretty easily gain more advantage, and he can collect this pawn and maybe go further and pick up these all pawns. So Magnus tries to advance his king, but Nepo doesn't allow this and goes for the repeated move again. And I think it was in this position both players agreed to a draw, because there's nothing more. I mean, it would be simply time waste of time if you just repeat moves. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. Please let me know in the comments if you want much more games to be reviewed. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.